Buongiorno studenti. Today I want to talk about a very common mistake with Italian learners, which is using tu in the wrong situation in Italian. A mistake that can sometimes make you sound impolite without even realizing it. Now, many English speakers use tu with everyone in Italy. For example, they may ask a health receptionist, "Puoi aiutarmi?" Let me type this for you. "Puoi aiutarmi?" Or they can ask a stranger they started having a conversation with, "Dove vivi?" "Dove vivi?" Now, the problem is that in many of those situations, tu is too informal. And if you use if you use to with strangers, other people, or in professional contexts, you may end up sounding disrespectful or be immediately marked as a tourist. But why is this mistake so common with students? Well, it's super simple. In English, there is only one you. Molto più semplice, much easier, much simpler. So you say you to your friend. You say you to your boss. You say you to a stranger. And there's no formal versus informal distinction, so they all work perfectly well. But in Italian, we actually have two different words, two different forms for you. Let me show you both of them. The first one is tu, which is informal. So tu is informale. And the other one is lei, which is formale, formal. Now, we switch constantly between these two forms depending on the context. That's how we do this in Italian. So here's the simple rule I want you to remember. Use tu informale with friends, family, children. You don't need to use lei with children, even if you don't know them. And people your age, you can use tu if you are in informal situations. Use lei with total strangers, older people. That's actually a very nice way to show them respect in Italian. Use lei with people in professional situations, and use lei with waiters, shop assistant, and hotel staff. That's a way to show them respect for their work too. Now, we have these two forms, so tu and lei. And now I think I can hear some of you saying, Valentina, but lei is she. How is it possible that we use that for you? I know. Lei is she, but it also doubles up in Italian as a formal you. So it's exactly the same subject pronoun, but we use it for both. We use it for saying she, and we use it for saying you, formal. So how do we understand what we're saying? Actually, we understand that from context. So from context, you will understand if someone is talking about someone else, lei, she, or if they're talking about you formal. For example, they're talking to you. So if they keep saying lei, looking at you, they're probably talking to you, not about she, about lei. Va bene? Now, as always, let's see what this means in practice with some real life examples, because I don't want to leave you here with just a general rule. I want to guide you through the application of these in real life. Okay, let's suppose you want to ask somebody in Italy, where do you live? So how should you proceed? Well, you start in your head with the verb for telling verb for to live, which is vivere. So we have, let's take more space. We have the verb vivere. So you start conjugating it. Io vivo, I live. Tu vivi, you live. Lui, lei vive, he or she lives. So now you know that tu vivi, this is tricky because you think you're good to go with tu vivi, but you're not. So if the situation is informal, you already know that person, then you can ask, you can use tu. So if you want to ask, where do you live? How would you say that? Dove vivi? So that will be the informal form. Dove vivi? Because that's dove tu vivi. We drop the two in questions most of the times. And if instead that's a stranger, the person you're asking to is a stranger, or you are in a professional environment, then you will pick the conjugation for lei. So how will you ask, where do you live, with formal you, which is lei? Dove vive? Dove vive? Perfetto. Now let's see another example. Let's suppose you want to ask, how are you, to someone in Italy. So that verb, the correct verb that we use in this case is the verb stare. So you start conjugating it. I am, like in this case we use stare. Io sto. You are. Tu stai. He or she is. Lui, lei sta. So again, how would you ask, how are you, to a person in an informal situation? Come stai? Come stai? And how will you ask that in a formal situation? Come sta? Come sta? So you picked the lei form, not the tu form. Now, I would love to know if you have ever used tu in a formal situation in Italy, or if you have ever been unsure which one to choose depending on the situation. Let me know in the comments. Now, what I want to remember is this. When in doubt, start with the formal you. Now, Italians are becoming way more relaxed about this. Sure. So, especially in more touristic areas, a lot of people use to directly. But in many contexts, like for example at school or at university or with professionals, lei is still considered the most appropriate form and a sign of respect for the other person. And by the way, as always, I prepared a PDF for this lesson to help you really assimilate the rule and see it in practice. In the PDF, you will find a helpful recap of the rule that we have just learned, plus more examples like the ones I showed you today. If you want to use the PDF, you can immediately download it. You can find the link in the description below this video, and you can download it immediately, and it's free. Now, one helpful tip. This is something that's usually not really explained when talking about this topic, but as you know, I always want to I try my best to make these lessons not only theoretical, but very practical. It happens that the relationship becomes more informal. Maybe you start talking to a stranger or to a person in a professional environment or someone who you meet every day in your journey, in your visit in Italy, and you feel like the relationship is becoming more informal because you become more familiar. Then there's one simple and very polite way to switch from lei to tu, and that is this. You need to learn this phrase, which is a phrase I personally love and I personally use if I need it, which is: possiamo darci del tu? Possiamo darci del tu? Now, this literally, this is a kind of a weird literal translation because this translates to, can we give each other of the tu? But to say this in a much simpler way in English, that means, can we use tu with each other? So this is a very polite way to switch from lei, formal you, to tu, informal you, in a very kind, nice way. Ad esempio, i miei studenti possono darmi del tu. So my students can use tu with me. So no, you don't need to use lei with me. I'm just going to address this because sometimes of course, you ask me in the comments. I always use the informal you with my students because you are my community. And I want this to be a friendly and welcoming place for you. So possiamo darci del tu. Nessun problema. Now, a fun fact. Today, in Standard Italian, we use lei as the formal you. But in the past, especially in some parts of southern Italy, people actually used voi, you plural, as a form of respect. I know, now you're like, Valentina, what's going on? But I want you to tell you this because I've heard these, I've received this question a lot from students and even here on YouTube. So let me show you what I mean. Voi in Italian means you all, so it's you plural. But you may have heard uh, someone asking you, for example, do you want a coffee? And they need to use the form, they're using the formal you. So you would expect something like lei vuole un caffè or just vuole un caffè. And instead you end up hearing something like voi volete un caffè? How is this possible? Well, that's because that's an older form. I mean, very old, from like the 1800 in Italy. And this today sounds old-fashioned and not using standard Italian anymore. However, some Italian American families still remember or use this form because their grandparents emigrated many years ago when voi was more common, especially in southern regions. I can tell you from my personal experience, I still remember a niece of my grandmother using voi with my grandmother, mia nonna, because that was the custom in Sicily in the past, and she was using that. So nonna for me was tu, but for her, it was her aunt, sua zia, and she would use voi with her. Now, nowadays, it can happen to hear these mostly in the south and especially in Campania. So if you visit Naples and the barista tells you volete un caffè, don't look around you like, are they talking to? They're talking to you. They're just using this older form. So for you, this is what I want to remember. Use tu with friends and lei with strangers. That's the easiest rule. And use possiamo darci del tu for a very elegant and very polite way to switch from lei to tu that will also earn you some extra points. And that's all for today. È tutto per oggi. Ci vediamo al prossimo video. See you next video. Ciao ciao!